Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to another edition of Recruit Military Live, a series of live broadcasts covering all things military transition, veteran employment, mil-spouse employment, and much, much more. My name is Lucas Connolly, retired U.S. Army officer and former TAP program manager, here to help you navigate the turbulent waters of transition to civilian career. If you're in a search of meaningful employment, then you're in the right place. Please visit rmvets.com/live to learn more. All right, folks, let's roll right into our show. Are you transitioning from military service to civilian employment? Are you a mil-spouse returning to the job market after a period of unemployment? Are you a veteran trying to navigate a career change? Well, if you are, then you're watching the right show, so don't touch that mouse. Today's topic is transition AAR. That's right. We're going to conduct a Humvee top hip pocket after action review of one hypothetical transition from military service to civilian employment, sprinkled with enough sardonic humor to make Doctrine Man look like Bloom County. Today's guest is a former U.S. Air Force military training instructor. The Army would call them drill sergeants. He's an accomplished musician, a Boy Scout leader, a published author, a marketing professional, and a widely followed YouTube personality. Since leaving the service, he has spent an inordinate amount of time generating content on both LinkedIn and YouTube, which delivers both wit and wisdom to the transitioning service member and veteran communities alike. Ladies and gentlemen, please join me in welcoming Adam Braatz to the show. Adam.
What's going on? You're too kind. That was a nice intro.
I tell you what, man, you just stack up those accomplishments, and sometimes it's intimidating for me. I leave them in there. I have great guests like yourself, and I start to think to myself, what am I doing with my spare time that's contributing to the world? I need to do more.
Well, hey, you're doing great work, man. I appreciate all you do.
All right, folks. Now that you know who we are, we'd love to hear who you are. Hit that chat window. Let us know where you're at, where you're watching us from, who you're with, who you served with, and any other status. Are you active duty, National Guard, getting ready to retire or separate after a single term of service? Let us know. And if you got questions, comments, issues, or concerns, please feel free to jump in there in the chat, and time allowing, we'll address them. Now, Adam, no doubt, your time in the service, you've done some after-action reviews. As an instructor, you've led quite a few.
Yeah, quite a few. One thing that I like doing is, obviously in the civilian business world, they call it a postmortem. And one thing, a tactic that a lot of successful business leaders do is what's called a pre-mortem. Mm-hmm. So before an event happens, they do the day before, they get the entire staff together, an event or a program, and they say, all right, tomorrow's event was an absolute disaster. Everything that could have gone wrong went wrong. What happened? And doing that pre-mortem gets folks thinking about risk management, preparedness, mm-hmm. risk mitigation, logistic issues, and it's just a great way to attack events and programs and whatnot, or any situation really. And that's kind of what we're doing now. So if you've already transitioned, or if you're about to transition, this will apply to you either way, because you can call it a pre-mortem or a post-mortem.
That's actually funny, because when I was an executive officer, I used to talk to my commander, and we'd be trying to make a decision about how to do something. We go in this direction, we go in that direction. And I would just look at him and say, well, sir, let's imagine how you would explain this to an investigating officer if things went really bad. And then he would kind of think and things, okay. And then we would kind of pick a direction. But today we're going to after action review a typical or a not so great transition. Now, when you do an after action review, for those of you who are not steeped in the military traditions of leaning up against the Humvee and having somebody in a helmet tell you that you did something wrong for a half an hour, what we will typically do is we break this into three pieces. It's what should have happened, what happened, and what did we learn from it, or what can we do better next time? So we'll dive right in here. We got about 5 topics. We're going to attack them. Okay. First bullet point, what should have happened? What should have happened is the resume we wrote during our TAP class should have opened up all the doors we needed to make it into an interview room where our military bearing and professionalism would undoubtedly secure us the job offer we were looking for. Adam, what happened?
Yeah. And this one I can speak to from personal experience. It doesn't matter how beautiful that resume is. It is the tip of the iceberg as far as tools in your toolbox or weapons in your arsenal for your transition. And in my experience and in the experience of folks that I've worked with, network development, getting out, pounding the pavement and meeting people and asking questions and getting to know people in your discipline and your industry and in the areas that you are hoping to work in businesses that you hope to be connected with, and starting that as early as possible has always been the best way. Knowing someone on the inside, knowing someone who knows someone on the inside, having that personal recommendation, and that feeling of trust and familiarity is how you get the best jobs, period.
But Adam, I sent out 100 applications. I've been sitting at my desk all day long, just banging away on applications and launching. I must have sent my resume to 1,000 different people and the phone's not ringing. What am I doing? You're saying I have to go talk to people and shake it? What is this networking stuff? I don't get it. Why doesn't this work?
And I've been there too, sending out a ton of resumes and not getting any responses. There's two reasons for that. One would be on my end, if I'm playing I could do that game. I'm sure we've all been there, when I was on, having recently transitioned and in a period of unemployment, prior to getting my first post-service gig, I was looking at Indeed and everywhere in between and seeing jobs that were like generic program manager or manager associate or whatever. Logistics manager, really like broad sounding topics, and saying, oh, I could do that. I considered the police academy. I considered being a part-time bus driver. The list of random stuff that I applied for I wish I had a running list of the things that I applied for during that time. And so I wasn't applying to things that were a logical fit for my skill set. Hence, I wasn't getting a reply, which is my fault. On the other hand, even if I have skills that match, depending on what the job market looks like, I could be one of 100 applicants, 50 applicants, 30 applicants, and there are some reasons. Somebody doesn't like my font, gone, next. Somebody spills coffee on my resume, whoops, next. There's so many factors that go into it. I know someone who is an absolute perfect candidate for a job, but they were employed within that same company, and they were applying for an advancement, and they got considered and they got in there, and they were the best person for the job, but they weren't hired because they'd have to backfill the other position, which wasn't their fault either. There's just so many things that go into it that we don't know about. And we're up against people who have skills and experience that doesn't just translate, it is directly associated with the position. And a lot of those know someone who knows somebody who knows the hiring manager, who knows a leader, who knows an executive, who knows a VP there. Those are all the things that we have working against us. And I'm not saying that to discourage anybody. It's just your resume is not enough. It's part of it. It's like having a workout routine and focusing only on your biceps. Like, you won't have a developed chest. Your triceps aren't going to get the job done. They're 2/3 of your arm's musculature anyways, right? Your abs are going to be all, like, your resume's your biceps. And yes, you need to work on your biceps, but everything else, and your largest muscles, the most often neglected, leg day, right? That's your legs from your hips down is like what, 65-70% of the total mass of your body's musculature. Well, that's your network development. And people skip leg day more than anything else, and they suffer for it. This is an analogy that just popped into my head as I was talking. I'm very excited about it.
This best original content, hands down. Let's end the show now before we screw it up. No, and so I think you've articulated some very crucial points here. You're up against the applicant tracking systems, which are only as good as the human being who programmed them. And the last time I checked, we are flawed. And we've heard stories about companies putting into their own applicant tracking systems, the one that they created, a resume that they see as the ideal candidate for a particular role, and having it kicked out as disqualified. or putting the resumes of the software engineers who created the applicant tracking system into the applicant tracking system and finding out they're only a 37% match. So, you know, and when I talked to somebody who was an ATS expert, so to speak, I asked straight up the question. I said, how do you beat the box? And he leaned in and said, you don't. You go around it. Going through the ATS and getting that resume in is a necessary evil, but it is networking that's going to get you the interview.
No, it'll get you the interview, and then it's up to you to show up polished and professional and personable and knowledgeable and all those things. But yeah, I mean, you can't do that. You can't best explain how your stuff translates and how your military exclusive stuff applies to you being a great asset to their company if you don't get your foot in the door. And I wasn't even talking about applicant tracking systems. I mean, that is another thing working against you. And you can keyword optimize and use software to help you get through the ATS till you're blue in the face, or you can just talk to a human being who will hand carry your resume to the, well, hand carry. We'll email your resume to the hiring manager and say, hey, I know this person, they're quality. I think they'd be a good asset. That puts 10 feathers in your cap. You will waste so much time trying to beat an applicant tracking system, especially if you're applying to things that might not necessarily be a good fit. And you should be, for every job, tailoring your resume to fit what you're applying for. Otherwise, you're peeing in the wind. Like if you are wasting everyone's time. And I've been there, sent out 100 resumes and, you know, filled out all my information in the submission form that's already in the resume. You know what they make you go, the hoops they make you go through. Did that for 100 positions that I wasn't a good fit for. I not only wasted time in the submission screen, I wasted time tailoring my resume or trying to make it sound like I was a better fit than I was. And then I wasted the time of the people on the other end.
Okay, so we've kind of we've slayed that dragon. Okay, the answer is we should have been networking. That would have solved that problem. All right, so let's take a look at the employment solution. Okay, what should have happened based on our long and prestigious military service and impressive list of accomplishments? Employers should have been lined up around the block with six-figure job offers. What actually happened?
Crickets. I mean, there are people out there who get it, who get what it is that you bring to the table as a honorably separated or soon to honorably separate military member. There are folks who get it, that understand that not everyone in the military just spends 99% of their time rolling around in the desert or the jungle with a rifle, right? That there are soft and hard skills, there are leadership, there are teamwork, there are followership skills, there are you know, how to run everything in your office and Outlook suite and run a copy machine. And, you know, like these are marketable skills, and there are people out there who get it.
You know, what's funny is a lot of the skills that are not appreciated in the military, you know, inventories, records, training management, admin, MS Word, MS PowerPoint, all these little things that nobody wants to do because it's not their core thing. Like nobody wants to be the para-rescue jumper with a broken leg who's in the admin shop for 6 months, who, by the way, is learning about human resource information systems, learning about tracking, learning about administration, but he just can't wait to get back in a parachute. Where now flip to the civilian side, and those administrative skills he or she learned far outweigh that jump log with an impressive number of static line or free fall jumps.
I mean, yeah, somebody on the receiving end, a hiring manager will say like, man, that's really cool. And yeah, thanks for your service. And yeah, that's hardcore. And yeah, that lends to, you know, your credibility as a great, you know, hard charger.
Resilient.
And then they'll say
a lot of soft skills.
Yeah. And they'll say, I'm not sure how any of that fits here.
Right. And so I think the real answer is one, identifying the skills that the employer is actually looking for, the qualifications, right? Mirroring them and then translating them into terminology in such a way that the employer understands why you're a valued asset. Because I've heard people say, you know what? Nobody hires vets anymore. I hear all this guff about we want to hire vets, but nobody hires vets. And then I heard somebody else say, Mr. Quick, he said, you're right. Nobody hires vets. They hired qualified applicants.
Qualified civilian applicants. You're not a vet anymore.
Help them understand why you're qualified for the job, not simply that you're a vet who needs a job.
That's good. I'm going to use that. Well, I mean, hanging your hat on your veteran status isn't, I mean, people will say thanks for your service, but they're looking for someone who can fit in their work environment. You have to put on your civilian camouflage at a minimum. You know, really, you need to fully integrate here. You know, you can find someone who gets it, but those employers and hiring managers who get it just inherently and naturally get what it is that you bring to the table, they're becoming fewer and far between. If you think about the percentage of people who are serving is dwindling, right?
Mm-hmm.
Especially as we draw down in a post-war period of time. The number of people who see combat dwindling among them. The percentage of Americans who have a immediate family member who gets it, who has been in the military, a military spouse, is dwindling exponentially. So there's going to be less people who just naturally get it. So you can try to find someone who gets it. And even if you do, guess what? There's going to be 10 other veteran applicants for that same position. So it does not give you a leg up if you are like automatically, unless you are capable of expressing what it is that you bring to the table that fits directly.
Exactly. And, you know, I think many of us in uniform, we downplay some of our experiences because we don't fit into that Rambo image or that alpha, you know, of what the military values, right? Now, there's lots of different folks in the military, from parachute riggers to reverse osmosis water people and slickers and chemical people. So I was having a conversation with one of our interns the other day, and I said, you know, how do you sell your experiences? And it came to the conversation of, well, what did he do while he was in the service? And the term mess daddy came up. Oh, he's the mess daddy. And then I said, wait a minute, brother. You managed the largest restaurant in Jefferson County with the highest head count, with the biggest budget, and all those inspections and food quality and all the people you had to manage and the civilian employees and the scheduling and the special meals and the budget you had to manage. You are underselling yourself.
Yeah. And that, I mean, some people say I am just a blank, you know, and there are failures up and down everywhere. You know, there are potential civilian employees, military transitioners who are failing to adequately sell themselves, who are selling themselves short, who are not applying for the right jobs, who are not writing their resume in the right way, who are not networking, who are not doing the things. And then, as you mentioned, there are some people who just don't understand veterans, and they may say thanks for your service, but they may have stereotypes in the back of their head, and they may not want to hire veterans. I mean, if you think about when I was growing up, and this is before 9/11, but it was pervasive to hear somebody say that people only join the military if they're too dumb to go to college. You probably heard that a million times, right? And it became very unpopular to say that after 9/11. But those folks, your peers, those are hiring managers right now. Those are decision makers in these firms, and they may appreciate what it is that you do and have done and bring to the table. But in the back of their head, they may be thinking like, this person was too blank to
they're like they're Beetle Bailey. They're out behind the building at Camp Swampy peeling potatoes. Well, we're much more than that, and I think we all know that. Hey, Zach brings a great question to the table, and it's a perfect segue into our next one. Workplace culture. What should have happened? Our world-class discipline and battle-proven leadership skills should have very quickly distinguished us as future executive-level management material. Adam, what happened?
Yeah, I personally, I overserved and overmammed and made myself look like a real weirdo.
Yeah,
people want to hire folks who they think will be a good fit, folks that they think will be a pleasure to work with, a pleasure to be around. What I thought was, you know, here I was coming out of the prestigious MTI Corps, who are called the ultimate professionals. I wanted to show everyone in this first post-service gig what real professionalism was. And that manifested in, I mean, I was wearing shirt stirrups for the first 6 months. You know, I was calling my boss, sir. even though he said like, hey man, you don't have to call me sir anymore. Like you got to chill out a little bit, you know?
My
But
boss told me the same thing. He
yeah,
said, he looked at me, pulled me in a room. He said, look, I understand, you know, I'm in the military, used to being very formal. I'm asking you to stop calling me sir. My name is Tom. Everybody calls me Tom. And not only is it my preference that you call me by my first name, but I got to let you know that when you call me sir, you sound like a sycophant. You sound like an idiot. So stop. I was like,
yeah.
okay, I got it. Clear message.
And it can be hard. It can be really hard. I mean, that stuff, especially if you, and it depends on where you work. If you grew up in a sir or ma'am culture, the South, for example, a lot of those corporate entities up and down the chain, there's sir and ma'am up and down the chain. So obviously you have to be able to read the room.
Right.
But generally speaking, the sir ma'am thing, it may be built into your DNA, but it just doesn't exist in the civilian working world.
I think the
Unless
big takeaway, I'm sorry, I think the big takeaway is the adaptation, you know, the need to adapt. Because just as if you were going to a foreign country to work with a foreign military, Afghan military, Iraqi military, Italian, Romanian, Bulgarian, whatever military you might be working with in a partnership, they're not going to adapt for you.
Yeah.
You're in their environment now. You have to adapt for them. You have to acclimate to their culture. And if that's Mr. Stevens or if it's Chris, you got to figure that out. Take a listening halt, if you will, survey the culture and adapt accordingly.
what happens if you go to basic training? And I mean, that's like forced adaptation. And let's say you are not able to adapt. You are presented with failure to adapt and they send you home. There is failure to adapt in the civilian world. And no, they don't send you home, but you just are pigeonholing yourself and making it difficult for you to progress or connect with or relate to your fellow employees. So, I mean, obviously maintain your professionalism. And if you want to start off with sir, ma'am, if that's just who you are, that's fine. But especially if somebody says, yeah, don't call me that. Call me John, call me Jane. You need to do it. I mean, think about if you were applying for a corporate position in China and this was your dream job. And the thing about this work environment is that everybody spoke Chinese and everybody wore dark suits with red ties. Listen, I'm making this up here. And they all utilized certain customs and courtesies that were very culturally specific for that area. Everybody there did that. When you walked into that place for your interview, when you walk in there, would you be wearing, you know, your sleeveless
Pajamas.
American flag, you know, cut off shirt and saying, I'm going to speak English because I'm not ashamed of who I am.
I'm going to teach you guys what real professionalism looks like.
Yeah. Like, would you do? No. And it's not, we're not asking you to be ashamed of being a veteran. We're not asking you to hide being a veteran. Just like I wouldn't ask you applying for that job in China to pretend like you don't know how to speak English or that you are from where you're from. It's just you have to read the room. You have to look like you fit. Otherwise, a hiring manager has too much to do to waste time trying to jam a square peg into a round hole. They're not going to do it.
All right. So need to adapt. Read the environment, assess the climate, adapt accordingly. All right, so let's talk for a second about finances, financial situation. So we did a transition. We had some problems with our finances. What should have happened? Our first job out of the military should have offered us pay and benefits comparable to our military pay and benefits, making for a smooth and easy transition with absolutely no impact on our budget. Adam, what actually happened?
Well, and not saying this to be discouraging to anyone, but often, especially with that first gig out of the service, and this is not always the case. I know personally folks who are outliers, but often there are folks who might indeed take a step back in their compensation, even if it is for a short time, from what they were used to getting in the military. It happens a lot to senior NCOs, really, like E7, 8, 9. Folks who have a ton of experience and are making really good money in the military, but don't have direct applied technical experience in the field that they're applying for. So a lot of times those folks will take a step back in compensation before everybody, you know, they get that first civilian gig under their belt and everyone's like, oh, this person's amazing. Let's push them up. A lot of them rise quickly, but a lot of them are not prepared for that first step back, not only culturally, personally, ego-wise, but financially. They're just not ready for that. So prepare for the worst, hope for the best. And the biggest thing that you can do to contend against having to take a step back is really laser focusing on what it is you want to do and why and how your skills apply. Because if you're applying for things that don't fit, you could roll the dice and get hired, but you're not going to get compensated appropriately.
Yeah, and I think that's what most people don't appreciate, or I should say many people don't appreciate, is that, yes, you have senior officer, senior NCO, you have gobs of experience managing people. But if you want to go work for the Acme Industrial Widget Manufacturing Company and you don't know anything about widgets, you don't know how widgets are made, you don't know how widgets are produced, you don't know how the marketing people target the audiences they want to sell the newest widget to. The guy taking out the trash in the break room knows more about widgets than you do, while you may have decades of management experiences. You don't know how to make a widget. You still probably know how to put a 50 caliber machine gun into operation because you learned it years ago. Well, guess what? Those widget skills that these people have that are all around you, they took years to learn them. You're playing catch up.
Yeah. Yep. And so you have to sell those things that may not apply as hard as you can to close the gap and show that your ability to pick up whatever it is that's new from a technical perspective is quick and easy. I work with folks all the time on their LinkedIn, and it turns into a career, especially if they're transitioning, it turns into a career development conversation 9 times out of 10. If I had $1, I cannot even tell you how common this is. If I had $1 for every time a colonel or above, I asked them the question, like, so what is it that you want to do? And they replied with, well, I just want to lead people. I would be a very rich man. Oh, yeah. And every time I say, like, lead people doing what? Oh, well, I'm just good at forming teams and good at, developing people and getting stuff done and blah, 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 blah. I remember I had a general officer who I was helping with LinkedIn and expected to just get here's how you make your profile polished. And I started asking him, like, what do you want to do? And he didn't have an answer. And I said, leader is not a job title in the civilian working world, generally speaking. If you don't have, a sign that a veteran doesn't know what they want to do most of the time is when they say, oh, I'll be a project manager. Yeah. Manage projects, right?
Fingernails on a chalkboard every time I hear that.
Oh my goodness. And I'm not discouraging people from being project managers. I know a lot of veterans who are very well suited for that, and they get their PMP certification and they go into project management and they do a great job. But I'd say 9 out of 10 people who say at some point project management maybe don't know what they want, don't know what they want to do, don't know what they want, who they want to do it for, any of that stuff.
Yeah, and there are project managers, and I liken it to like a platoon sergeant, right? You wouldn't walk into a recruiter's office straight off the street and say, hey, I want to be a platoon sergeant, sign me up. Yeah. They're going to look at you and say, well, what do you want to do? It's like, I just want to lead people. It's like, oh, okay, well, that's not exactly how it works. We're going to train you how to do a whole bunch of other stuff. And in a couple of years, if you're still squared away, you want to be a platoon sergeant, I'm sure we can make it happen. But you're going to have to learn the basics first. So
yeah, I'm a CEO. You got to make me a colonel.
Yeah. Yeah.
Just off the bat. Right. The lack of understanding of those things is what can impact your financial situation in the short or the long term after you transition. And now I hope everybody here gets the right fitting job that pays them appropriately, but it is not uncommon for folks to take a step back in that compensation. And then you add to that, now you have to pay for health care. Now you have to pay for life insurance, which, by the way, if you don't have civilian private life insurance until after you retire, guess what? You're 40 years old with a laundry list of medical ailments. This is what I did. I got out. I didn't get civilian private life insurance until my mid-30s, and it's cost 6 times as much as my wife's. Get private life insurance now while you're in. Yep. Good gravy. But either way, that's an added expense that surprises a lot of people. Life insurance, health insurance, all of the insurances that you now have to cover. those can sneak up on people. So not being prepared for expenses and not being prepared for the worst when it comes to a compensation situation can really set people up for some very trying times.
Yeah, and I think the big takeaways on this particular topic when it comes to finances is have reasonable expectations of what your compensation is going to be based on your skills, and probably take advantage of one of those financial preparedness classes, one of those financial advisors they've have hanging around the TAP programs, and do a sit down with them, a one-on-one, and let them go over your budget. Hey, Anthony from Recruit Military has a great comment. Another reason informational interviews are so important, the transition piece. You can find out very quickly where you stand, what you can improve, and where your fit is best. And I think that segues very, very nicely into our next topic. All right, last topic, last one we're going to hit before we head on into the finish line. What should have happened? All the great advice our senior leaders in uniform and our TAP program could have given us would serve as a sufficient blueprint for success under all conditions. Adam, what actually happened?
Well, and a caveat is, the TAP is, I think it's an oft maligned and misunderstood program that, I mean, it has a very short amount of time to cover a lot of stuff. And they do a good job of covering that stuff in that very short amount of time. And those facilitators, I've known so many TAP facilitators. Those are passionate people who want you to have success. And they're some of the hardest workers out there that really want to facilitate a strong transition, and so that advice that they give you is all good advice. It's just a lot crammed into a short amount of time because they only have so much to work with. And it's like drinking from a fire hose. And for me, it was during a period of time where I just wanted to turn my stuff in and freaking go home. I didn't care. And not everybody's like that, but I was like, I'm going to figure this out because I didn't know what I didn't know. And there wasn't anybody shaking me and beating me upside the head saying like, dude, you need to know this stuff. And you need to do more than just this TAP. You need to do the voluntary stuff, the non-mandatory stuff. You need to follow up with these people. You need to be doing informational interviews. You need to be networking starting, I don't know, yesterday.
Yep.
Like I didn't have that person. So I didn't know what I didn't know. And I wanted to just get out. and I didn't know I wasn't setting myself up for success. So,
I think that what I learned, because again, I missed it. I was overly optimistic. I was just kind of skipping through the tulips and humming "Everything's Going to Be All Right" by Bob Marley, and it's like no worry, no cry, everything's going to be fine. Don't worry, be happy. But really, that lackadaisical, overly optimistic approach is going to work against you. You've got to be engaged. You've got to be out there talking to people. And one of our viewers today makes a very solid comment, requests informational interviews for employees that have the job you want and the positions that would be your managers, project managers, product managers, supervisors, civilian leaders out there who have the experience that they can impart on you as a potential mentor. And there are other organizations out there as well that make mentorship programs available. Am I right?
Oh yeah. There's too many to be named. One of the more popular mentorship that's free is Veterati. I don't have personal experience with them, but I've heard a lot of really good things. I mean, there are tons of avenues to get good advice, and there's a lot of advice out there.
ACP as well, American Corporate Partners. That's another great one.
Yep, ACP. There's almost too much information, and it's hard to wade through the fog and find the stuff that's valuable, that is good information, not bad or not predatory even, which is out there sometimes, or information that applies to you. Just understand that there is not a 100% perfect path or perfect way to go about it. There isn't like a one perfect way to have your LinkedIn profile or you're not going to get a job. The only thing that's going to prevent you is from getting that job and from successfully transitioning is if you don't listen to people who are on the other side of the wall and you don't seek them out and seek their advice. I mean, there are folks like us screaming from the mountaintops on the other side, from the rooftops on the other side of the wall. And if all you're doing is fishing around on the we're still inside of the wall, there's a lot of insights and information that you can get, but you're not going to get the good stuff if you are networking and asking questions inside this comfortable bubble on your side of the wall. You gotta venture on the other side of it. And that includes with people who are not veterans, not military members, not in that ecosystem at all.
All right, Adam, here's your opportunity. Put on your MTI drill sergeant hat. Jan Berger wants to hear it. He wants you to unfold the knife hand and give him some direction. You have an opportunity to give one solid piece of instruction from your hip pocket to Jan Burgess and everybody else is out there. What's one thing they can do, one thing they have to get right, one thing to take away from today's show?
Network. Let me give you two things. Let me give you two. Network and be humble. Because if you go into this with an ego or with an expectation or with an entitlement or a feeling like you are owed or deserving of XYZ, you are going to suffer. You are going to experience undue hardships if you have to contend with your ego. And reach out to people and network without ego. And by that, I mean with a giver's mindset. If you reach out to somebody and say, hey, nice to meet you. I'd love to connect. Here's my resume. I'm looking for a job. That comes from an egocentric place of entitlement. Like you should be scrambling to give me blah, blah, blah. Your ego needs to get completely thrown out the window. Be humble. Network with a giver's mindset and ask questions for people on the other side. I mean, there's not just one bit of advice, but I mean, I guess overarchingly humility would probably be your greatest asset.
All right, everybody, you heard it. You will network and you will do it from a position of humility, or Drill Sergeant Adam will be having you doing push-ups until he gets tired. All right, Adam, before we roll into the finale of the show, is there anything you've got going on professionally you'd like to share with the group?
I do. That's something that would love to share with everybody. I'm currently evangelizing for something called the Veteran Usability Project. This is a VA program. The VA is seeking feedback from veterans, from spouses, from currently serving members, from caregivers, dependents, surviving dependents, anybody in the ecosystem. They're seeking feedback about the user friendliness and the intuitiveness of their suite of apps, digital apps, their websites and whatnot. And they're looking for this aggressively. So if you go to veteranusability.us, they actually pay people to participate in these surveys. They give you $5 just to sign up. They give you, and then they will mail you a check for participating in feedback sessions. I did a 45-minute Zoom session and they mailed me a check for $50. I mean, it was easy as pie. And I rested well knowing that I was providing important feedback that made the VA's apps easier for people to use and made it easier for everyone, regardless of disability status or physical status or mental status or whatever, makes it easier for them to be able to access their health and benefits information remotely. So folks, I would encourage all of you to please go to veteranusability.us. It's easy process. Like I said, they give you $5 just to sign up. And this will help the VA. It's official VA contract. They got the contract numbers there. I know people are like, oh, paid studies. Yeah. Forget you. But I mean, this is a real actual thing. And
helping the VA make their services better for the transitioning service. I dig it.
Yeah. And the stuff doesn't move at the speed of government. The stuff, I mean, all of this information, your feedback goes directly to the desk of the chief technology officer. A lot of times when you give them feedback, especially when it comes to people who use assistive devices, people who are visually impaired or hearing impaired, stuff like that, they can make same day changes to the website. I mean, this helps thousands of people. Everybody wins. So please, veteranusability.us, and help me to spread the word for that. I appreciate it.
All right, Adam, thank you very much for your time today. And everybody out there, if you haven't already done so, do yourself a solid and head on down to www.recruitmilitary.com, where you'll find over 400,000 jobs from more than 16,000 employers. Recruit Military is on a mission to help veterans, transitioning service members, and mil spouses alike find meaningful opportunities. On behalf of Recruit Military and the folks that joined us today, Adam, thank you very much for taking the time to be here.
My pleasure, man. I appreciate the invite.
It's great having you. And for those of you who really want to have a special treat, next week, we are going to have none other than Walter Hurd, retired U.S. Army Colonel from the Special Operations Community, and more importantly, National Director of the U.S. Army TAP program, Transition Assistant Program. He's going to be with us to talk to us about all the great things that TAP is doing and how you can optimize your use for your transition success. This has been Lucas Connolly for Recruit Military Live. Until next time, good luck and Godspeed.